I favor the modification of the Boston Act just as fast as the Lord will let us.
That was President Franklin Delano Roosevelt speaking about terminating the Volstead Act, also known as Prohibition. This led to the end of an era of great turmoil in the United States. From 1920 to 1933, the ratification of the 18th Amendment led many people in the United States to become criminals. Many bootleggers became rich, gang violence skyrocketed, and police officers were given bribes to keep them quiet. The government had the right to regulate alcohol production, but did not act on its responsibility to enforce its law. Contrary to what is to come, this wretched law had humble beginnings. In the 19th century, Americans would drink 3 times more than we do today, with some people angry at the corruption alcohol was causing. These people were the women who were sick with the drunkenness of their husbands and had had enough of the abuse and toxicity. They were at the forefront of the movement, doing a crusade of sorts against alcohol from 1873 to 1874. They formed the Women's Christian Temperance Union, or WCTU, in 1874 and began installing water fountains in public parks and writing school books for children about the dangers of drinking. Also, they would sing hymns and pray outside saloons. Women like the second president of the WCTU, Frances Willard, worked hard to maximize reform activity and allow lots of women to participate in the movement. They gathered at the 1882 WCTU convention and created the Do Everything policy, encouraging everyone to unite and fight alcoholism. Inspired by the women, some men gave up drinking and some saloon owners closed their doors. Some states even put in place their own dry laws preventing alcohol consumption before Prohibition had even started. However, due to their family needing them, the WCTU's movement slowed down. But around the time they began tapering off, the Anti-Saloon League began to further their cause. Yet, while the WCTU had other goals like public sanitation and health and creating an overall better country for their children, the ASL only focused on one thing: alcohol. They used pressure politics to boost everyone's fear of alcohol and used propaganda very effectively around the time of the First World War. Most major beer suppliers were German, and the ASL found ways to pin race into the alcohol equation. Wayne Wheeler, the president of the ASL, rounded up support for prohibitionists in any election he could. Finally, Prohibition was ratified in 1919 as a constitutional amendment. Unfortunately, the specific laws of Prohibition contained many loopholes that could be easily exploited through vague writing. While selling and making alcohol was illegal, drinking alcohol wasn't illegal, leading to some clubs to just hoard alcohol throughout the Prohibition. Whiskey and religious liquor for medicinal purposes were also legal, and many people took advantage of these methods. Companies made products like Near Beer, which had only slightly less than the 0.5% alcohol that makes it illegal, or products like Vine Glow, a dehydrated brick of grape juice, which itself was perfectly legal. But it had a warning that said, after dissolving the brick in a gallon of water, do not place the liquid in a jug away in the cupboard for 20 days, because then it would turn into wine. As alcohol became a commodity, bootlegging became widespread. There were places like Rum Row, which started from the tip of Maine to the coast of Florida, where people would sail from ports about 3 miles off of the coast and take shipments of beer and alcohol from Europe. They then were easily able to sell it through the country and make money. But it wasn't just places. There were also bootleggers like Roy Olmsted. In the beginning, he was a member of the police force in Seattle. While he hadn't been on the dry squad, he had arrested his fair share of people for bootlegging and illegal moonshining. Roy noted how the people would often be unorganized, leading to their easy capture. He also realized, though, how much money these bootleggers were making. This led him to turn sides and turn into his own bootlegging businessman. His first movement of liquor didn't go very well, with him being caught and promptly fired from the police force. But this played directly into his own hands and simply gave him more time to focus on his business. Not too long after, he was moving 200 cases of illicit alcohol daily, making $200,000 monthly, butting heads with the local mayor and politicians. His power in the illicit liquor trade led him to become a very influential figure during this period of time. Another famous bootlegger was a man named George Remus, who made an ingenious plot to bootleg alcohol easily. George Remus knew that there was lots of alcohol left for medicinal purposes underground, so he created his own pharmaceutical company to acquire liquor for medicinal purposes, then made his own transportation company to transport it, and sent his men to take the liquor and put it into the illicit liquor trade. That allowed him to sell the alcohol and make lots of money very quickly. Yet this isn't to say that there wasn't any enforcement on the amendment of Prohibition. It was simply ineffective. On March 3, 1927, the Bureau of Prohibition was established to enforce this law. There were about 10,000 members on this elite task force, but at the same time, there were about 120,000 people living in the United States. This meant that for every Prohibition agent, there were around 12,000 people to oversee. Needless to say, this was a near impossible task to put in place. To add on that, there was an overwhelming amount of corruption throughout the Bureau, and it was generally unstable. Even when people were caught, it didn't do much of anything. The agents that stayed clean mostly caught small-scale operations, which simply clogged the judicial system with petty violations. Meanwhile, there were much more important issues that needed to be dealt with. At this time, gangs gained great amounts of power, with lots of people being killed during gang arguments and legal liquor trucks being hijacked to put inside the illicit liquor trade. There were gangs everywhere in the USA. There was the Purple Gang in Detroit, the Five Families in New York, and the Mayfield Road Gang in Cleveland. But one of the most infamous interactions between the gangs was the Valentine's Day Massacre. On February 14, 1929, George Moran, the leader of the North Side Gang in Chicago, was called by an anonymous hijacker and was told that he procured a massive shipment of booze. George Moran and his men agreed to meet them, and they went to the garage. Once the hijackers arrived, they came with shotguns and submachine guns in hand, lined George Moran and his men against the wall, and shot them dead. Though to this day no one knows who did it, many people say it was Al Capone, the leader of the Chicago Outfit Gang. The dissent for Prohibition has been rising and rising with the events of the Valentine's Day Massacre, with many people believing that it must be amended due to the damage it has caused. In February of 1933, the 21st Amendment was proposed to repeal Prohibition. State conventions quickly ratified the amendment, and by December 5, 1933, only 3 states remained to shift the balance and make it law. After Ohio and Pennsylvania gave their answers, only one more state was needed, with Utah approving it at 3:32 p.m. President Franklin D. Roosevelt made a statement, trusting that the citizens of the United States would not abuse this individual freedom, and proudly stated, "What America needs now is a drink." The people rejoiced as this era of violence concluded. In conclusion, though the 18th Amendment showed promise in its roots and respected the government's rights, the enforcement and overall responsibility to uphold the law were fundamentally flawed, causing great discourse in the United States of America and led to a time period of chaos due to the government failing to acknowledge their own responsibilities and adjust as the time continued. Instead, they waited until the end to take real actions and made them have to end a law that could have been great if they'd simply done it correctly.